This is Chris from Play Comics, and you're listening to Pop Goes Your World.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 113, Stripes Movie Review. I'm Chris McBrien, along with Caveman Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. Derek, what's new in the world of pop culture for you, my friend?
Hey, Chris. I have had an opportunity to watch a whole lot of stuff over the last couple of weeks.
Good.
Partly because I was on vacation, and partly because I've made the time. The Netflix show Mindhunter season 2 dropped in mid-August. And I don't know if you remember, Chris, a while ago, we did an episode where you asked us to give you some suggestions of shows to binge watch.
Yeah,
and
that was on your list. I remember.
Mindhunter was on my list. So for people who maybe don't know much about Mindhunter, the idea behind this, it's based on real events. It's based on a book that's a nonfiction book. The FBI does criminal profiles. Today, if there's any sort of bad people out there, the FBI will come in and do a psychological profile of, what kind of person most likely committed these crimes. And it helps. It's a tool that the law enforcement uses to help catch bad guys. Well, it had to start somewhere. So in the 60s, 70s, 80s, it was a new science. And so Mindhunter is based on the book that was written by the guy that developed these techniques for the FBI. And part of their research methodology is to interview real serial killers that were captured, because a lot of them just can't stop talking about themselves and why they did what they did and what they were thinking. And these interviews led to a lot of the methodology of how it's done. So Mindhunter season 2 just came out. It picks up right where season 1 left off. It is again, it's a linear story, so it's follows you through the progression of as the FBI is now starting to embrace these techniques, and they're actually putting them to work. And again, all of the serial killers and the bad guys they talk about in these shows are real people. These events really happened. I mean, they take a little bit of license for television, but the stories are based on books that were written by a real guy that really did this. So Mindhunter season 2, excellent. I just finished it. Quite good. I strongly recommend it. And then another movie I just watched on video the other night. It's called Brightburn. Have you heard of this one, Chris?
Nope.
So Brightburn.
Shocking, I know.
No kidding. A new movie, Chris? Okay. So Brightburn was written by Brian Gunn and Mark Gunn, and it was produced by James Gunn. And so people might know the name Gunn. James Gunn was the director of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He has a lot of other fantastic credits as well. And Brian and Mark are his brothers. So with those three guys behind this movie, that should hopefully pique your interest a little bit if Guardians of the Galaxy and that type of film is something you enjoy. The story of Brightburn is basically, what if Superman, when he crashed down on Earth, by the time he started to develop his powers, say around 12 years old, turned out to be a jerk. He wasn't raised by Ma and Pa Kent. He wasn't given these, they tried to give him these, awesome values to be a great person. But what if the kid was just like, no, I have powers. I'm better than you. I can do whatever I want. And you're just human parents. You can't stop me. And I'm going to do whatever the heck I want. And the kid turns out to be a sociopath. And that's the story of Brightburn. What happens in that situation where this adolescent starts to develop powers at 12 years old and realizes there's nothing that can stop me. I can do whatever I want. So it's a horror / thriller / superhero kind of movie. It's not officially tied to any superheroes. They don't actually say Superman, but it's clear that the inspiration for this story was the Superman myth, and it was quite good. I'm not a big fan of horror movies. It's certainly not my genre, but I do like superhero movies, and I'm all in on James Gunn. So I gave it a watch, and it was quite good. I'd strongly recommend that one too.
Very cool. Got a couple things I want to talk about. First of all, I think I'm having deja vu because I feel like last episode that you were talking about Mindhunter. Maybe I'm losing my mind, but it triggered something and it made me just realize. So again, I always talk about my Roku stick that I have that I watch old shows on. And I found there's an old show on there. It's from the 90s, maybe early 90s, something like that. And it's Canadian and it's called Exhibit A. And it's got Graham Greene He's
I was
like
going to say, the guy from Dances with Wolves.
Yeah. He's Canadian, right? And
sure is.
And he's great actor and great voice. And so he does the narration for it. And I was watching it, and I would just find that stuff fascinating. How they use forensic science just to solve these crimes by like a fiber or a hair or something. Like, just, I don't know. I just find that stuff incredible. It's just, that stuff is so cool to watch. So there was that. And then also just today I was doing a corporate training. So, I mentioned before, I'm a college faculty member. That's for a living. That's what I do. And then I also do like this corporate training where I train like managers come and, we do all this soft skill training and stuff. And I was I was getting ready to start my session today. And so I go around the room. I said, just introduce yourself. Just tell me your name. And I want to know something interesting about you, something that's unique. We were going into a lot of soft skills, and I thought it'd be a neat place to start. We were talking about leadership and how unique these people are as leaders and what they can bring to the role. So I want to know something unique about them. So we're going around, and I mentioned I'm a podcaster in my spare time, and the one girl says, my name is whatever, and I love Archie comics. Archie comics from like the 70s. And I was like, oh man, we're going to get along great. I was just like, that's so cool. She's like, I know you're going to think this is weird, but I like Archie comics. I'm like, I don't think that's weird at all. And she's like, but I don't like any of the newer ones, and I don't like Riverdale or anything. I only like the old stuff. I'm like, I think we're going to get along fantastically well. So
Chris, it's your wife better watch out, because this sounds like this is your lost soulmate.
I know, no kidding. And I just wanted to mention real quickly. So 2 episodes ago, we did our episode on our favorite TV theme songs of all time, and we got some feedback on that. I just want to share it. So Stacy Went Kasler said, I can't really argue with any of your selections, she writes, but I do think you did a disservice to some of the more recent shows. The Sopranos has one of the best theme songs ever. The theme song for The Man in the High Castle is absolutely haunting, and many of my favorites are instrumentals, which I think do a great job of setting the scene for what you're about to watch. For example, Friday Night Lights, Twin Peaks, Stranger Things, Mad Men, Miami Vice. St. Elsewhere's theme song is a classic, and I still love the theme song from Beverly Hills 90210, which to me is the quintessential Gen X show. I'm so glad they're using it for the reboot. So Stacey, thank you very much. Really good feedback. I guess I should start and preface things by saying I think I actually do a disservice to recent shows all the time. That's kind of what I do. And I don't mean to. It's certainly not by design. I'm just, as you know, so stuck in the past that I never mention anything past like 1989. So, I guess I do a bit of a disservice to newer stuff, but that's where you come in, Derek. But the other thing I would mention, though, is I kind of made it a little bit clear, but, maybe not clear enough on that episode, that when I made my list, I only went with theme songs, quote unquote songs, that actually had lyrics in them. I didn't mention any instrumentals because I just kind of took the spirit of that episode. And, we should have maybe clarified that, you and I, between each, because you mentioned some instrumentals. I didn't do that. I stayed away from that. I just went with theme songs. So that's probably why I didn't have any in there. But you know me, if I would have included instrumentals, I would have mentioned like Battlestar Galactica from 1978, or something like that, right? So
yeah, and I remember with that one, I tried to stay away from songs that were either released as singles prior to being used as a theme song,
right,
or if possible, songs that like didn't. Obviously, my Big Bang Theory selection sort of killed that rule, but I was thinking things like House and The Sopranos and Greatest American Hero. Like a lot of those shows had the themes became like pop hits. So I tried to just exclude those from the list to dig a little deeper. But anyway, no, I mean, the feedback is great. I got to agree with just about all of them. I don't watch all of the shows on that list, but the ones that I am aware of, I got to agree. And I think sometimes, like we had mentioned on that show, sometimes narrowing down to just 5.
Oh, it's so hard.
It's so difficult. And you're right. It's like, well, 6 to 10 are almost every bit as important as 1 to 5 when there's that much to choose from. So.
But no, Stacey, thanks for the feedback. We, like Derek said, we really appreciate it. But I have to be honest, I'm still probably not going to mention anything recent. I don't watch anything recent. How the heck am I supposed to know it? But anyway, on that note, let's get started. I'm your head counselor.
I did not enjoy this anymore the second time.
What's going on? What's wrong?
Never seen it.
Oh,
Never
wow.
interested in seeing it. No desire to see it. Was not interested at all.
Oh, I paid $200 for these shoes, but I mean, on the best.
It's certainly tame by today's standards.
There's a very fat pair of pants hanging from the flagpole this morning.
It is not something I think I ever need to see again.
Oh! Matt Damon.
Matt Damon.
Okay, so this week it was my turn to nominate a film. I nominated one of my favorite movies of all time. You know how much I love these classic comedies, from that era. I like Bill Murray. I just love Bill Murray. I think he's great. We recently took a look at Meatballs, which was his first movie from 1979. And then, 2 years later, he came out with Stripes. And that was the movie that I nominated for this week and wanted to talk about. So I mentioned it. The movie came out in 1981. It was directed by Ivan Reitman. It was written by Len Blum, Daniel Goldberg, and the late, great Harold Ramis. It was starring Bill Murray, Harold Ramis, John Candy, Sean Young was in it, PJ Soles, Warren Oates, and John Larroquette. And it even had cameos from Timothy Busfield and Joe Flaherty and Dave Thomas. The movie had a budget of $10 million, but it grossed $85 million in 1981. Which actually put it at the top 5. It was the number 5 grossing film from that year. The top 10 had some luminaries in it too, Cayman. The Cannonball Run was number 6. Yes. And For Your Eyes Only, we were talking about James Bond last episode. The For Your Eyes Only was number 8. The Four Seasons was number 9. And Time Bandits, number 10. A very underrated film. I love that one.
Well, what were the top 4? I assume one of the Star Wars movies. Was it Empire come out in 81?
No, Empire came out in 1980. So Raiders of the Lost Ark was the number 1 grossing film. On Golden Pond, surprisingly, was number 2. Superman 3 was number 3. Arthur was number 4. Those are even those top 10, I think every one of them. Chariots of Fire was number 7. It sucked. But The Four Seasons wasn't bad, though. I mean, of the top 10, those are all pretty good movies. 1981 was a pretty good year for film, I would say. But anyway, so Stripes was number 5 that year, and one of my all-time favorite comedy classics, as I mentioned, that came out in the 70s and 80s. And so the plot of the movie is pretty simple. Murray and Ramis are 2 schlubs who get fired from their jobs, so they decide to join the army. And it's basically 2 movies in one, and I never really thought of it like that, but I remember one of my roommates in university, because I used to make them watch this movie over and over and over again until I thought they were going to kill me. And one of them mentioned, he goes, this is 2 movies in one. And we're going to get to that a bit later. We'll mention it. But I just wanted to get your impression because I made you go back and watch this movie. I think I remember you saying at the time, last episode when I nominated it, you said, I didn't really like it from what I remember, but I'll go back and watch it. Did anything change in the time that you had to watch it?
No. So I watched this
oh man,
probably in the last couple of years since you and Yancey started the podcast, because I think when you started the podcast, you and I had talked about some movies. Once you started doing movie reviews, I remember you and I talked, and I said, what kind of movies are you going to ask Yancey to watch? And you said, here, I have this list. And you would send me a list of 30 or 40 movies. And you had said, just for fun, check off how many of these have you seen? And I think I'd seen 2/3 of the list. And so I said, well, you know what? If these made your list, I'll make a point of trying to watch some of them. And then knowing that you were going to do them on future episodes, and then you had asked me if I would come on to a couple of episodes. So I thought, okay, I better do my homework here. And I know you had mentioned Stripes a few times. And hey, I like Bill Murray, and I like Ivan Reitman as a director, and I mean, I like Harold Ramis. Ghostbusters is definitely a movie I really, really enjoy, and I've seen many, many, many times. So there was a lot that on paper sounded like, hey, this is going to be something I'm going to enjoy. And I remember watching it a few years ago and thinking, no, it didn't really work for me. That was a couple of years ago. And then last week you said, hey, I'm gonna ask you to nominate Stripes, or you're going to nominate Stripes. And you asked me to watch it again. And I was like, okay, I will. So I went back, and I don't think I liked it anymore. In fact, I probably liked it even less. But that could be simply because I knew that the last time I watched it, I didn't really care for it. I literally kept a chart. Every time the movie made me laugh, I put a tally mark. Mm-hmm. How many tallies do you think were on the list? I'll give you an over and under. 5.5. Do you think I'm over or under 5.5?
Knowing you, I bet you it's under.
It was, yeah, 3. I had 3 things that made me laugh.
What were the things that you laughed at? Do you remember?
Okay, yeah.
According to your chart, I got to know it.
Okay. So, and they all happened within probably about 5 minutes of each other in the movie. It just happened to be a little part. When the 2 leads are taken by the MPs after the mud wrestling, and then they go to I think it's the general's house. He's not
General
there.
Bardacke. Yep.
Yeah. And then the scene with Sean Young and Harold Ramis,
with the force
where
field?
she's like, I feel like I'm 16 years old again in my parents' house. And then she's like, we're going to play this game where it's like, pretend you have a force field.
Yep.
And he's like, oh, how do you win this game? And she's like, oh, well, if the other person, gets through the force field, then you win. And then he leans in and kisses her, and she says, you just broke my force field. And he goes, yeah, you win. And I don't know, just the way he delivered it, it made me laugh. Then A couple of minutes later, the scene cuts out to the other guys who were all arrested, and then they're all brought back. And the guy's reaming them out. I think it was John Larroquette, if I remember.
John Larroquette, by the way, just as an aside, was absolutely drunk when he did that scene.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, I've been reading some of the trivia.
Oh, yeah.
Like, So,
Love that
so he's
scene.
reaming them out, and it was a visual gag. One of the guys had a T-shirt on.
Yeah.
And the slogan you would expect to see is "Death before dishonor."
Yeah.
Except it said "Death before disco."
Disco. Yeah.
And as soon as I saw that, I started laughing. So I'm like, okay, that gets a check mark.
But there's more funny. No, sorry, I've just got to step in. There's more funny stuff going on in that scene. First of all, John Candy is there, and he has dried mud. His eyebrows are all dried mud. It looks like clay. His whole hair is just dried mud. Just that is a visual thing. And you're not telling me it wasn't funny the way he delivers the line when the guy says, "Where were you?" "Well, sir, we were on our way to the bingo parlor at the YMCA." Like, you guys, like, shut up. Just shut up.
I don't know. Didn't make me laugh.
Oh, man.
And then like 5 minutes later when the two guys show up and everyone's like, "We're not going to graduate," and then they're like, "Let's go to the motor pool and we'll practice," and Bill Murray's getting them to do the workout, and he's like, left, right, left, black guys help the white guys.
and John Candy starts a fight for no reason at all. The guy's like, "Hey man, what did he say?" He says, "The black guys help the white guys," and he pushes them like just for no reason. I know. It's like, why is he getting in a fight?
Those three things, that was it. Those were the only times I laughed at this movie. This time through, I might have laughed a little more the last time.
Right.
For me, I felt it. I didn't find it funny. It was one of these ones where humor is very subjective. We've talked about this before. Humor is subjective. Humor is contextual. Humor is correlates to time very much, because a lot of humor is all about, you hear timing is everything, but it also sometimes it's funny because it takes place in a certain time and it's contextual that way. Sure. And if you're out of that time, or you don't have that context, or you don't have that frame of reference, you're not going to get the joke. And I think for me, there was a lot of that going on where I just didn't find it funny. And one thing I've heard people say before is, if you hear something that's funny, some people will laugh. Your reaction when something's funny is to laugh. Other people will just sort of nod and go, "That's funny." And to me, this movie was a lot of that. It was, I can see how some people will find this funny, but it didn't make me laugh. I would sort of be going like, yeah, okay, that I could see that being funny, but not a lot of ha-has. Literally, these three things were the only things that made me literally laugh out loud. Everything else was just, meh.
Well, I think, I guess I understand what you're saying, but I think my thing with this movie is there are some scenes that I genuinely laugh at, and even just talking about them now, I'm cracking up, right? So there's that. But I think one of the things I liked about this movie too was I am genuinely entertained when I watch this movie. And it's not all just like laugh out loud jokes rolling on the floor. It's not like, remember when we talked about Spaceballs, and it's just like one joke after another, like rapid machine gun fire? This movie's not like that, but I was highly entertained by it. And I found myself just endearing myself to this movie in a lot of ways. Now, put things in context, because you make a good point. A lot of the humor, a lot of comedies are rooted in the times in which they were made, right? And so I was 12 years old when I first saw this movie, because it came out in 1981. I was 11 at the time, and I couldn't get into the movie theater to see it because it was rated R, right? But then it came out like within the year on the movie network. So I watched it on there. I wasn't supposed to, I just sneak downstairs and watch it or whatever. So I was 12 and watched it. And so of course it's naughty because there's swearing in it, and there's like some,
a lot of boobs.
There's not, I wouldn't say there's a lot. There's some gratuitous nudity, but that was a thing in the 80s too, right? Like they just had to get it in there. Like they had to have that. They put that scene in where Stillman's looking through the telescope, spying on the girls in the shower, because like that's just what you did in the 80s. You put that in the scene, right? And he just improvises
so bad.
So
doesn't
bad.
Hold up to, again, that's one of those ones where we talked about this a dozen times. It doesn't hold up when you look at it through today's lens. It shouldn't have been acceptable then.
It shouldn't have been acceptable then.
It is absolutely
exactly.
not acceptable now.
No.
And it doesn't really advance the plot of the movie, except in the sense to sort of paint him as a despicable dirtbag.
That's the point. That's the point.
You could have that same outcome and not actually show the shower stall, like the change area where he's looking into, or shoot it in such a way that you don't actually see any of the nudity. Maybe you see some silhouettes and you're like, oh, he's looking into the girls' locker room. Right. Again, it was unnecessary. Mm-hmm. By today's standards, it's unnecessary. In the 80s, I like we've said before, you didn't have the internet, and as in order to get bums in seats, you wanted to show the young boys some boobs, and so the movie does that, as many movies in the 80s did.
Like I said,
and
it was a
par
thing.
for the course.
Yep,
they have a checklist. You know, what do you have in this movie? You got a recognizable comedic star. Yep, okay, check. You got a director we know. Yep, check. Okay, you got some boobs in there. Yep, check. Again, they checked all the boxes, and like you said, it was a box office success. And that's not to say that without the boobs it wouldn't have been, but I got to think at least partly some people went simply because they're like, well, I know I'm definitely going to see a little bit of gratuitous nudity. I'll give it a try.
So I just want to kind of, because I was entertained by it so much, I just want to kind of go back to the beginning of the movie and kind of walk through it, like, and maybe question you along the way why you didn't think it was funny or whatever. But I mean, okay, so it opens with Bill Murray getting his shoes shined, right? And then he gets into the cab, you know, and he's with the girl, and then he doesn't want to take her. You know, he basically is just fed up with his job. Right. And she's not even really giving him all that much of a hard time. If you really take a step back and look at it, look at the scene a little bit differently. He's actually the total jerk in the scene. She just wants to go to the airport. He just starts picking on her for no reason and then kind of eggs her on. And then, she gets upset with him. And then he pulls over and throws the keys, basically off the George Washington Bridge. Right. So that her stuff's locked in the trunk and she can't get it out.
Yeah. But I think to me, what I got out of that, again, not really being that familiar with the movie, this was in my mind a comment on the division of class. Like, here was a woman who's clearly affluent.
Yeah.
She's wealthy. She's got all these bags. She's going to the airport, you assume, to go travel somewhere far away, whether it's on vacation or whether she travels. Like, she would look a little bit older, so maybe she was traveling to like summer home or something. So to me, that was sort of the commentary here is, if you're an average Joe, you're going to have the kind of job where you have to be subservient to this kind of person who represents wealth. And
she does say to him, you look like a typical low-life character to me.
Absolutely.
So you're right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So he obviously gets fired, and then you're telling me you didn't like the scene? First of all, Harold Ramis, gosh, he was so good. So up until this point, he was a writer. That's what he did. The only acting he did before Stripes was on SCTV. That was it, up here in Canada. So right. He didn't do any other acting. And so when they went to cast him in the movie, they wanted him. And the studio said, no, they wanted Dennis Quaid. And
yeah, I read that.
Yeah.
That would have been bizarre.
It was weird. And funny enough, Dennis Quaid actually shows up later in the movie. You know, when they go and they do the graduation thing, that's the fact, Jack. And they do that whole thing.
Yeah.
You can't really spot him, but he's in the crowd. He's sitting in the crowd as an extra because his wife was PJ Souls. So, so he came to like watch her or whatever. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The studio did not want Harold Ramis. And Bill Murray said, you want me to do this movie? You cast Harold Ramis. You don't cast Harold Ramis? I'm not doing the movie. So they said, okay, put Harold Ramis in it. But anyway, the beginning scene, when he's in the classroom and he's teaching like English as a second language, you can't tell me that scene didn't make you laugh. I've seen this movie 8 bazillion times from Sunday, and I still laugh every single time. I can't wait for that scene as it's coming up when he's teaching everybody. And he's like, does anybody here speak any English? There's like no hands. Nobody? And one guy puts up his hand real slowly. And he's like, yes, sir. You know some English? And the guy says, son of and then the whole class repeats it, son of and I don't know why, I just love it. I love that scene. I just laugh away. And then he gets them all singing a song. He gets fired, obviously, too, because you can't do that, right? So, I don't know. So what do they decide to do? Oh, I know, let's go join the army. And the scene when they go to the recruiter's office you didn't find it funny at all?
No, again, to me, it was more of a, yeah, that's funny. Like where he says, again, to demonstrate how dated this is, he's
right.
like, are you homosexuals? And what does he say? No, but we can learn?
No, he goes, you mean like flaming? And he's like, it's a question we just have to ask all of our recruits. And he goes, well, no, we're not homosexual. But we are willing to learn.
That was it. We are willing to learn.
Jeez. Exactly. I'm pretty dated. It's just so funny. I don't know. I just think the whole thing is just entertaining in just this absurd way. But then when they get to basic training and you meet the secondary characters, they get there, they meet the female MPs and Judge Reinhold's character. And just as another aside, by the way, this movie, when Ivan Reitman first came up with the concept for this movie, his concept was Cheech and Chong join the army.
Yeah. I read some of the trivia before we did the show.
Oh, okay.
I saw that and thought this would have been a very different movie with those two guys.
Well, he wanted them to do it. Obviously, he never met them, but he came up with this idea and he pitched it to them, and they loved it. They said, "Oh, this is great, yeah," because they had just come off doing Up in Smoke, right? So like, "Oh yeah, we'll do this movie."
Which
is
I
great.
actually just rewatched like 2 weeks ago when I was on vacation. It was on one of the cable channels. I'm
Right.
like, I haven't seen this movie in 20 years. And that's one that I felt really held up. It made me laugh.
Oh, so-
anyway, that's another podcast.
We'll have to put that one up at some point. Yeah. So, see, Up in Smoke I thought was okay. I liked Cheech and Chong's next movie. I thought that one was even better. But anyway.
I like all their stuff.
Yeah, their stuff was good. But anyway, so they liked this idea. They're like, oh, yeah, we were going to do this. The only thing is that they wanted total creative control. And Ivan Reitman was like, no, like we want to have a, and they were like, no, we get 100% creative control in this, so we're not doing it. It's like, okay, forget it. Let's get Bill Murray to do it. And that's kind of the way that they went. But anyways, so the reason I bring that up is because remember when they meet all the secondary characters, which is just I love the way they set this movie up. And they meet those guys, and that kind of drugged out character played by Judge Reinhold, it was his first movie he ever did. The lines that he gets in this movie are all from that original script. So they took some of the drug stuff from Cheech and Chong and they gave it to his character. So anyway, that's just a piece of trivia of where that all comes from. But when they're meeting all these secondary characters, oh my gosh, that even when remember they go in to get their hair cut, and then John Candy, who used to have a lot of hair, he had a long hair at one point, right? When he was on did Second City in Toronto, he had long hair, even when he was on SCTV. And at the beginning of this movie, he's got long hair, and they cut it off, and they took him right down to the wood, right? And he comes out, and Harold Ramis takes one look at him and goes, Hare Krishna, Krishna. And I'm thinking, like, do millennials even know what that is? Like, do Hare Krishnas still exist anymore?
I would be shocked if they do. Not to the sense that they did in the 80s.
Yeah, like I was watching, like, I don't think millennials even know what the hell this is. But that scene, and then of course John Candy grabs him and throws him up against the wall. And I've mentioned this before on I think back when Yancey was on about John Candy and how much I love John Candy. And the thing with John Candy that I don't think a lot of people remember, you remember John Candy as being this big, overweight, lovable, affable guy, which he was, but he also had a real edge to him. And if you go back and watch some of this stuff, you realize that he always had a real edge to him, to his comedy. And it happens here, even in like the scene you mentioned later on when he's like, he just starts a fight in line for no reason at all. Like he just pushes a guy and just like, why? It makes it funny because you're confused as to why he's doing this. But when they do the circle talk with Sergeant Hulka, remember he gets everyone together?
Yeah, they're giving all their backstories.
Yeah, like I just love that scene. I just love that scene because it sets everybody up. And that was one thing I found that like those 70s and 80s comedies did better than any other type of movie that's come before or after, is they spent the beginning of the movie really setting up characters. And as I've mentioned on the podcast before, that's something I've always liked. Movies that have great characters to motivate the story. And I love how they just set up they can do it all. They set up their backstory in one scene. They go around, John Candy tells his story about being overweight. They're like, no, about how he eats pizzas. And Psycho, Francis, he's like telling everybody, if you guys touch me, I'm going to kill you and all this. And Cruiser. And another thing too, again, proving that John Candy had an edge. Remember the Cruiser guy? He was like a little slow. Yeah. And then he's like, oh, I like fast cars and fast women. That's why my guys at my car club call me the Cruiser. And John Candy, he is the next line. He goes, should have called him the dork. Like why are you being such a jerk? Like John Candy, he was so funny in this. I don't know. So then Hulka gets injured, right? Because Timothy Busfield misfires the mortar shell. Yeah. Right? And so he blows him up and blows up Hulka from the perch. So what does the platoon do? Of course, they go to a strip club because it's the 80s and this is an 80s movie, right? And John Candy, again, the edge, what does he do? He gets in and wrestles like 5 women. Like, you know what I mean? Again, John Candy.
He punches one at the time. He actually punches one of the women in the face.
Right in the face. Like, yeah. Wow. And that's what I'm saying. Like, when you think of John Candy being this lovable, affable guy, yes, he was. But he also had quite a different side to him in a lot of these roles, which I think people just kind of maybe, I don't know, gloss over or something like that, or they forget. But yeah, even that scene, you got Dave Thomas in there and they're playing Rubber Band Man by the Spinners. And like, it's just, I don't know. I know it's another opportunity just to kind of show off boobs, right? But I don't know. There's something about that scene too. I just find it's very funny. It's completely un-PC. And I don't know. So I get to this point of the movie and I'm thinking like, you're still not laughing, eh?
No.
Just not your thing.
No, I don't know. And I find this with some of the older comedies. It's just I can appreciate it for what it is, and I can sort of think to myself, how was this probably received at the time, and can understand that. Okay, yes, it made a lot of money. It was very successful. I can definitely see in the moment, a lot of people would have found this very funny. But watching it today, 2019, with today's lens, with today's values. Even sort of putting those aside just to take in this movie, no, it wasn't my thing. It wasn't my cup of tea. And believe me, the way I thought of it is, I like a dumb comedy as much as the next guy. Like Anchorman's a good example. Anchorman is dumb. It's a dumb comedy, and there's a lot of good lines in it, but it's a dumb movie. But I like it. I watch it. I've watched it more than once. I laugh, but it's not going to win any Oscars. Like it's just a dumb comedy. And a lot of movies that have the Saturday Night Live cast members tend to sort of fall into that category. This I sort of felt was sort of the same. I'm like, this movie's a dumb comedy, but I just kept thinking to myself, it's really more dumb and a lot less comedy. I didn't like it.
Well, then they, like you mentioned, they got rescued by the female MPs, right? They go to Barnaky's house. And so there's a scene there where Bill Murray, you mentioned the scene with, what's her name? Sean Young's character. So there's the PJ Souls character, and she's with Bill Murray in the kitchen. That scene, not scripted at all. They just turn the camera and say, just do something funny. Just do something. It's like 3:00 in the morning, they're shooting. They're like, just do something. So he does the whole thing with a spatula and everything. And like they just had this unbelievable chemistry together. But then the scene that I like is then it just cuts to a scene of the bedroom, and like the bed's completely made, and there's like this big kind of cedar chest at the end of the bed, and you're like, where is everybody? 10 seconds of silence. You're like, what the hell's going on? And all of a sudden the cedar chest just opens. And she gets out of it, and then he gets out of it too. And you're wondering, how the hell did they both fit in there? Like they had to be like crammed up, like inside a magician's box or something like that. And they both just get out of it. And he's like, "Well, that was interesting." It's like I don't know. I just find all this stuff absurd, just so bizarre and funny. I don't know. But anyway, so then they obviously have to train for graduation by themselves, right? And then they impress the colonel with their routine that they do. And then that's when they have to go to Italy to guard the EM-50, the urban assault vehicle. And that's where, like I mentioned before, it's basically two movies in one. And like I said, my old roommate in university used to say that. He goes, I love the first half. He goes, I hate the second half. The second half of the movie's dumb.
Now, I know I'd asked you on many previous podcasts previously was, have you ever seen the movie Full Metal Jacket? I believe you said you have not.
No, I haven't.
And that is very much the same sort of formula that you have in Stripes, except it's done in a very serious way with similar idea. The first half of the movie is the basic training. You get all the people, think of if Stripes was a drama. That's exactly the best way to describe it. You have all these misfits that come together. You have a drill sergeant who's a hard ass who has them, do all the stuff, and because he knows in the case of Full Metal Jacket, they're going to Vietnam, and many of them are going to get killed. So he needs to get them up to fighting shape. And at the end of the basic training, there's a fade to black, and then it picks up with them in Vietnam. And the second half of the movie is like, okay, now what do these guys do with this training they received? And they go to war. And a lot of people have made that comment about Full Metal Jacket, where it's really 2 1-hour movies smushed together to make a 2-hour movie. And the first movie is A+, fantastic. You're never going to see better performances, direction. It's great, good dialogue, good scenes. It's just awesome. And the second half is just okay, which together makes a good movie, but not a great movie because the second half really drags. And I felt the same thing here with Stripes. The first half to me was far superior than the second half. The second half really felt out of place, almost like it was tacked on, and it didn't necessarily give as many opportunities for the characters to be funny, if you will. But when you do a movie about basic training, unless you're going to end it with the graduation, you got to have them go somewhere where there's action. Because in 1981, I don't know where else you would have sent them. We were in the middle of the Cold War. There was no active combat zones where you were going to send new recruits. It's not like it was 10 years earlier where you're going to send them to Vietnam. So it's certainly a valid take on this movie that it's it's like two movies together.
Yeah.
And the first half being far better than the second, I think.
Yeah, like I say, I mean, they obviously go and guard the EM50, and then, of course, they end up taking it for a ride so they can go and or as they said, they took it out to get it washed, right? As if.
Right.
And they went to Switzerland to meet up with the girls. And then, obviously, Stillman, because he's an idiot, takes the platoon into Czechoslovakia, so they got to go and rescue them. And then they return as heroes. Pretty straightforward formula there. But if I look back on this movie, most of the great comedy movies from the 70s and 80s had some just funny quotes in it. And there was just a couple that stand out to me. So, like, again, John Candy's character, when Sergeant Hulka gets blown up and falls down from that perch, Oxberger goes up to him, Sergeant, does this mean we're through for the day? And then he just like chokes him out. It's just like, I don't know. I thought that one was really good. And then speaking of when the guys went into Czechoslovakia, Bill Murray's like, oh, come on, it's Czechoslovakia. We zip in, we pick them up, and we zip back out again. We're not going into Moscow. It's like going into Wisconsin. And then Ziski says, yeah, well, I got the shit kicked out of me in Wisconsin once. Forget it. Like, I don't know. I always like some of the lines. And then when they realize that, oh my God, John and Russell stole it. We got to go and get him. And I think it's Cruiser says, oh man, I can't believe the Russian spies. And Psycho's line is, all I know is I finally get to kill somebody. Like, just, I don't know. I just loved a lot of these lines in the movie. Loved it. I don't know. Just think it's a funny movie. And like in addition to being funny, like I said, I think for me, I'm entertained by this movie. I was entertained right till the end, even when they get back and they're heroes and it shows kind of what happened to them, what their fates were. Stillman gets sent to like Alaska or something like that. And Ziski's on the cover of Guns and Ammo. And of course, John Candy's character is on Tiger Beat. Win a dream date with Ox and all this. I don't know. I was kind of formulaic, but it was very much a product of its time. By these guys that kind of started in that underground. And that's where a lot of these guys met. Like, I mean, Ivan Reitman met Bill Murray from doing the National Lampoon Radio Hour, right? This kind of sprung from all of that underground comedy that was going on in the 70s and was highly influential, So.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that. So I think part of the reason that I maybe didn't find this as funny as you did, and partly I think part of the reason you find it as funny as you do and as much as you enjoy it as much as you do is because you saw it close to when it first came out, when you were much younger, when you were still much more impressionable and willing to see new things. Mm-hmm. And since it's come out, it has been, I don't want to say copied, but I mentioned earlier, like, it follows a certain formula that comedies in the 80s would check the boxes, and this one certainly does. But you got to remember that in 1981, this would have been one of the early movies to sort of set that example. And a lot of movies that came after this use this as the blueprint, in some cases copying whole formulas from it, where these are the beats you need to hit in your movie in order for it to be a success. And if you're not sure what they are, go watch Stripes and just copy those ones. And so I think for me, a lot of the parts that in 1981 would have been funny because it was unfamiliar and unexpected. I mean, that's a big part of comedy, is they say or do something unexpected in a way that maybe is out of context, is not expected at the time. We've already said comedy is a big part is timing, saying the right thing at the right time or the wrong thing at the right time. And I think for me, I'd heard a lot of these jokes before because they'd been copied from this, or certain scenes I could really see where it was going because it had been borrowed for other movies, TV, cinema, whatever. And when you go back and see the original, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's funny. I can understand and appreciate, what it is, but it's been copied so much that I'm diluted to the original. And so I think that's a big part of maybe why I didn't like this as much as you did, or as much as you might have wanted me to. But one of the things I do want to say that I did actually really like about it, that we haven't really touched on yet, is the music, the score.
Yeah, the score by Bernstein, right?
It's really catchy. It makes you think Army, or at least some sort of armed forces, but it does it in a way that's it's like the music's sort of fun and uplifting, so that you're watching a comedy, or at least you're not watching like a serious military drama where people are going to die and you're going to see heads exploding and nuclear bomb. Like, the music very much sets the right tone for this movie. And again, I had heard the music before, but not realized where it was from because shows have lifted it when they've done parodies or homages or whatever. Again, I'm going to go back to Family Guy. I think they've copied or ripped off or done an homage to just about everything that is considered funny, including this one. And I had no idea that's where they got it from, although I should have. So when I heard the music, that was one thing that I actually did enjoy through the movie was the score. Really, I felt added to the movie and was very well done.
Yeah, no, and like you said, it really, like, Bernstein was good. And, you know, I think he had worked with these people, not Ivan Reitman maybe directly, because Ivan Reitman was a producer on it, but as a director, John Landis, he worked with him when he did Animal House. Just, he brought a different element to it. It was still military kind of in it, the sound. But then there's also little other things that they drop in. Like, I love when they sing the doo-wah diddy-diddy song. And like I said, the Rubber Band Man by the Spinners in the wrestling match and all that. Like, yeah, there's a lot of good music going on in this. And I think that's a really interesting point. Just to the point that you made before about how you've kind of seen this before, or it's been done. It's almost like when Yancey used to be on the show. I remember when I had him watch, I think it was when I made him watch Animal House. And I think one of the comments that he made was, you know, I feel like, Chris, I'd already seen this movie a bunch of times. And I'm like, yes, you have. But this is the original.
Yeah.
You know, like that's why this is so important. Because when this came out, no one had ever done this before. You know, you've seen it because it's been copied 8 million times since then. And that's why I think I appreciate it, because it's one of the first. And I'm a big fan of that, like I mentioned, that underground comedy that came up from the 70s and stuff, like with Lemmings and, you know, National Lampoon. And then it kind of really manifested itself in Saturday Night Live, the early incarnation of it. And so I just love all that stuff. So I'm a big fan of all that. But anyway, I didn't expect you to like it anymore. I knew that you didn't like it, but it was more that I just wanted to be able to get together for, you know, the better part of an hour and talk about Stripes. At least just kind of go back and relive it and kind of laugh it up a little bit more and have another opportunity to watch it again. So, you know, it is what it is. I'm not here to change your mind. Just here to talk about movies that I like. That's all it is. You know, it's all good. So
now, one of the things I will say about Stripes, though, is it has had a life on cable. As you mentioned, you first saw it on premium cable when you were younger, and it has been repeated quite often on cable through the years, which I think a lot of people probably that's their first introduction to this movie is on cable. It has run recently on, I want to say, AMC, like in the last few months. And unfortunately with AMC being a family-friendly programming, they feel that they need to remove swears and nudity. And when you get a movie like this that, I don't want to say relies on the nudity and the swearing, but when you remove that, a movie that maybe someone like me wasn't really in love with at the beginning, you're not going to like it anymore when you've got all that editing happening. And I think it almost does the movie a disservice, even though I may not have cared for it. You want to make sure that when someone does have an opportunity to watch a movie like this, and especially if they hear about it from someone like you who says, this is a comedy classic, I love this movie, this is one of my favorite movies, one of my favorite comedies of all time, it's got this great cast, you think, oh, okay, well, I want to watch this. You really hope that their first experience seeing this movie is in the way it was intended to be seen without any editing. And unfortunately, it's one of those ones that has fallen victim to the AMC censors, and it has been running a lot lately with all of the cuts, which is unfortunate for any movie, but especially for this one.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like, I think you really do need to kind of watch it in its original, uncut, the way it was meant to be seen, or not in the kind of chopped up version. So that's a good point. But anyway, on that note, what do you say that we have some
fun with Caveman?
All right, since I nominated this film, I guess it's over to you for the fun part. So what do you got for us tonight? What do you want to have some fun with?
So we're going to go to the $100,000 pyramid.
Well, you know how much I love playing this game, so
hey, we love 80s game shows here, and this is one of the game shows that has had iterations on top of iterations over the years. I believe they've got a brand new version of the $100,000 pyramid on TV right now. But we're going to go back to the classic, the Dick Clark classic $100,000 pyramid.
The only one that's any good. Yeah.
Well, it's definitely the best of the ones.
Yeah.
So obviously, I want to give you some context about these clues
before we get into the winner's circle. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't want you flying blind. So in the 80s, there were a lot of movies that were made that have to do with war and soldiers and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, you come out of the Vietnam War, and you have a lot to say. artists have a lot to say, whether you're a writer, director, actor, whatever. So there is a lot of social commentary happening through film.
Right.
And in some cases, you get things like Stripes, where you want to make a comedy, but you want to set it in the military. In other cases, you have more action adventure kind of movies. In some cases, you have almost documentary style, where it's people who have experienced the horrors of war that want to share it. And they make movies that are graphic and violent, and they want to make sure that everybody understands, like, this is what soldiers had. So you have this gambit of movies about war, and many of them about recent war, some going back farther, some going, bringing the war home, some about the basic training. Tons of war movies in the 80s. So we're going to take 6 movies that are in some way related to war.
From the 80s.
They all came out in the 80s.
Okay.
I'm going to list off some of the actors that are in these movies.
Okay. And then I got to guess the title.
When you think you know the title, call it out.
All right.
Some movies have a much deeper bench than other movies. And given that some of these were from the 80s, I didn't recognize a lot of the names. So as I'm going through, I tried to pick names of actors that I'm like, oh, I think this person's pretty big. Or I'd look at their picture and go, oh, yeah, okay, now I know who that is. So you might hear some names and think, I have no idea who that is. My apologies if that's the case. But in every case, there are some huge stars, and I've tried to save those names till the end. So if you really seem to be struggling, just wait. We'll get to a star that's so big that you're going to go, oh, of course, that has to be whatever.
Okay.
So that being said,
all right,
are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, go.
Yeah.
Forrest Whitaker, Robert Wall, J.T. Walsh, Bruno Kirby,
Platoon.
Robin Williams.
Good Morning Vietnam.
There you go.
Yeah.
Charlie Sheen,
Platoon.
Harry Dean Stanton, Jennifer Grey, Powers Booth, Leah Thompson.
Red Dawn.
Swayze.
Red Dawn.
Red Dawn. Got it. Willem Dafoe,
Platoon.
John C. McGinley,
Platoon.
Tom Berenger, Tom Sizemore, Stephen Baldwin, William Baldwin,
Was it Full Metal Jacket?
Daniel Baldwin, Frank Whaley, Michael Wincott, Tom Cruise.
No
Pass.
idea. Pass.
We're gonna pass it.
No idea.
Okay. New movie. Alan North, Andre Braugher, Carrie Elways, Morgan Freeman,
Top Gun? No.
Matthew Broderick.
Is it Glory? Yes.
It is Glory. You got it. Okay. Johnny Depp, Forrest Whitaker,
Was it Casualties of War?
Kevin Dillon.
Oh, Platoon. Yeah.
Patrick Swayze, Jane Kasmerick, Fred Ward, Robert Stack, Gene Hackman.
Was it Uncommon Valor?
It was
Yes.
Uncommon Valor. You got it. Okay, which one did we miss? We missed. Okay, we're going to go back to this one. Willem Dafoe, John C. McGinley, Tom Berenger.
Born on the 4th of July?
All the way to the top of the pyramid.
That was hard. I thought that was Platoon for sure. Those guys. Oh my goodness gracious. Oh man. Oh man. I did. So did I win the $100,000 or?
Of course you did. It's all in Pop Goes Your World currency.
Oh, wonderful. I like that. It's better than Bitcoin.
Sure. Yes. What I was surprised when I was putting these lists together was a lot of actors appeared in a lot of movies together that had to do with war. Born on the 4th of July had like 3 or 4 actors that all appeared in Platoon.
I know. That's why I kept saying Platoon.
I know. And I knew you would. That's why I set it up that way.
Oh, so and it really, and I got to be honest. I've never seen Born on the 4th of July, but it just then I was thinking Tom Cruise, and I thought, wait a minute, that's got to be Born on the 4th of July.
Yeah, I figured when I got to Tom Cruise, you'd get it for sure. And of these 6 movies we talked about, Good Morning Vietnam, Red Dawn, Born on the 4th of July, Glory, Platoon, and Uncommon Valor, I've only seen 2 of those 6. I saw Platoon and Good Morning Vietnam. I have not seen the other 4.
Platoon is Oh man, like I mean, I don't want to say it's underrated. It won Best Picture for '86, but I think Platoon is overlooked as just how good of a film it is. Especially when you look at the allegories that go on. Like to me, that is the classic morality tale. I look at that movie and I feel like it's Charlie Sheen, and he has an angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder, and they're both trying to influence him, and they're both battling for his soul. And those angels are Willem Dafoe and Tom Berenger, those characters. And it's just like they're both fighting for his soul in that movie. God, that movie is good. God, too bad Oliver Stone turned out to be such a dip. Like, cause it's just, God, he was such a good director in that movie. Man, oh man, was that movie good. But, well, that was good. And I won the $100,000 in Pop Culture World currency, so I'll definitely use that. I'll cash it in and we'll get together and we'll play some rock band together sometime.
Yeah,
I'll
there we
use
go.
that. And maybe I'll use it to get us some tickets to another concert sometime soon, and we'll go and hang out, because that would be great too.
Yep.
But hey, listen, if you want to reach out to us, you're going to find Derek on Twitter at Amaron_DM. You'll find me on Twitter at CMcBrien. PopGoesYourWorld.com is our website where you'll find all of our contact information. We're going to come back next show with another one of our top 5 lists. We'll be back as soon as possible. But until then, this is Chris McBrien for Derek Myers saying thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.